The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Chapter 1. How can we become more effective? We all struggle, from time to time, to solve problems. In our relationships and in our professional life, we may struggle to make changes and overcome obstacles. When a problem arises, we may try to learn a new tactic for solving it. But even if it works, another problem arises where the tactic is no longer relevant. These failed attempts can breed resentment and conflict. To truly become more effective, one needs to make lasting changes to their character. Lasting change comes from the inside out, not from the outside in. If you can enact change from the inside out, you can learn to consistently achieve meaningful goals. Changing your character requires building new habits. Stephen R. Covey proposes that the way to become more effective is to build habits. Habits combine knowledge, skill, and desire. Knowledge gives you an understanding of what to do. Skill gives you the ability to do it. And desire gives you the drive to actually do it consistently. By developing the right habits, you can become more effective in whatever you need to do. It's not enough to learn new skills or behaviors to suit each situation. To make lasting change, you need to develop consistent habits and ways of thinking. But if you can develop effective habits, you can gain confidence and self-awareness. These changes can positively impact your family, your work life, and your community for years to come. Chapter 2. The first habit: be proactive. When something goes wrong, it's easy to feel you have no control over the situation. You get a parking ticket. You get passed up for a promotion. A pipe bursts in your home. You can get angry and blame the cop, boss, or plumber. Or you can consider your options and come up with constructive next steps. In reality, you always have the freedom to choose how to act. For example, when you encounter an unexpected setback, you can let anger take control. Or you can think of ways to improve the situation. Every new situation is a new opportunity to choose a response. This idea, Stephen Covey says, underlies the first habit of highly effective people. In the next few chapters, we'll explore how to be proactive and avoid being reactive in all parts of your life. Chapter 3. Are you proactive or reactive? When you encounter a frustrating situation, how do you respond? For example, imagine someone cuts you in line. Do you let your emotions take charge? Or do you make a deliberate decision to handle the situation calmly? To be proactive means to take responsibility for your own life and to choose productive ways to respond to situations. Many people are not proactive, they are reactive. Reactive people let outside forces dictate their attitudes and decisions. They blame other people for their problems. Reactive people might say, "He makes me so mad." Or "I just can't do anything about it." Reactive people use language that absolves them of responsibility, Covey says. Proactive people, on the other hand, focus on what they can control. They might say things like, "I control my own feelings," or "I choose to consider things differently." We'll see how to adapt reactive behavior next. Chapter 4. The circle of influence. An important part of being proactive is choosing where to focus your time and effort. Proactive people focus on things they can influence or control. Covey calls this set of things your circle of influence. Proactive people focus on things in their circle of influence instead of trying to change what they can't control. By focusing on their own actions, proactive people learn to deal with problems effectively. Their capabilities improve, and their circle of influence grows. If you focus on improving your own performance at work, you might gain new responsibilities. Or if you focus on improving communication with your children, they might come to you for help more often. Reactive people, however, focus on things outside the circle of influence. Covey calls this the circle of concern. Reactive people spend time and effort blaming people and circumstances for their problems, and their negative approach causes their circle of influence to shrink. For example, if you upset other people at work by blaming them, you might get left out of future projects. In every situation, you can focus your energy within the circle of influence. If the problem involves your own behavior, you are directly able to change it. If the problem involves other people's behavior, you can always work to guide them in the right direction. And even when you have no control over a problem whatsoever, you can still decide how to respond to it. Chapter 5. How can we start to be proactive? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Being proactive means taking responsibility for your actions. But it doesn't mean taking responsibility for every consequence. Consequences, Covey says, are outside of our control. If you make a mistake, the proactive response is to acknowledge it and learn from it. You can't go back in time or change the result, but you can choose to learn from your mistake. And you can take responsibility for keeping your learning in mind in the future. So, how can you start to be more proactive? Covey suggests making promises to yourself and keeping them. Start small, with a promise to make a minor improvement in your life. Promise yourself to go to the gym once a week, or promise yourself to read a book every month. Over time, work your way up to larger goals. In the next chapter, we'll learn how to set achievable goals that will guide your life. Chapter 6. The second habit, begin with the end in mind. How do you want to be remembered? Imagine your own funeral. What do you see? Who would you like to speak? What would you like them to say? This thought exercise can help uncover your goals and values. By considering how you want to be remembered, you're beginning with the end in mind. This, Covey says, is the second habit of highly effective people. Key idea: consider your goals before you start working. Covey explains that everything is created twice. First, we create in our minds. Then, we create in physical reality. Before you build a house, you make a blueprint. Before you give a speech, you write it. In any project, it's important to spend time clearly defining the end goal. If you don't, your project might fail, or someone else might lead it in a different direction, and you're likely to be frustrated with the result. The same is true for your life as a whole. Before you can become the person you want to be, you need to envision your goals clearly. Key idea: an effective life is centered around principles. In the previous chapter, Covey introduced the circle of influence. The circle of influence is the set of things you can control or influence. At the center of this circle, Covey says, are the people and things that are most important to you. What is at your center? You might be family-centered or spouse-centered, or you might center your life around success at work or around material gain. Most people have more than one of these things at their center, but centering your life around people and things can lead to problems. Your effectiveness will depend on the happiness of your spouse, family, or boss, or your centers will come into conflict, leaving you confused about how to act. Suppose you have tickets to a concert with your spouse, but your boss asks you to work late. Do you stay to please your boss? Do you leave to please your spouse? Situations like this are common and can lead to conflict and confusion. So instead of centering your life around friends, family, or work, Covey suggests another way. You should center your life around your principles. Principles include fairness, honesty, integrity, and dignity. Principles are universal, and they offer a solid foundation. Unlike people and circumstances, principles do not change. When you consult your principles, you can feel more secure in all of your choices. You can take a balanced view of situations. If you center your life around principles, you can objectively evaluate your options. You can clearly communicate your decision to your boss and your spouse. And regardless of what you choose to do, you can be confident in your decision. Key idea: a personal mission statement can help keep you on track. A principle-centered life is key to achieving your goals and clarifying your values. But how can you ensure that your goals and values always guide your day-to-day decisions? How do you make sure to begin with the end in mind? Covey suggests writing a mission statement. A mission statement is a written document that lists your goals and the values you want to uphold. Mission statements are extremely important for businesses and other organizations. They help employees make day-to-day decisions that uphold the values of the group. The same is true for a personal mission statement. By clearly stating your goals and values, you'll be able to make effective decisions every day. To write your mission statement, Covey suggests thinking of your roles and goals. Roles might include parent, neighbor, grandchild, scholar. Goals could include charitable impact or being inspiring to others. Writing a mission statement forces you to begin with the end in mind. Once you've written your mission statement, you'll have a clear picture of where you want to go. In the next chapter, we'll learn how to get there effectively. Chapter 7: The third habit: put first things first. The third habit of highly effective people is to put first things first. In the previous chapter, we learned that effective people define their goals clearly and keep them in mind. In this chapter, we'll learn how to consistently make progress towards those goals. Habit 2 was all about being your own leader and choosing a direction. Habit 3 is all about being an effective manager and making progress towards your goals every day. Key idea: effective people prioritize tasks that are important but not urgent. To practice Habit 3, we need to learn to manage our time effectively. Effective time management, Covey says, means organizing and executing around priorities. Consider the tasks you're faced with every day. Where should you focus your time? It's helpful to consider which tasks are urgent and which are important. Urgent tasks demand your immediate attention. Important tasks produce results. They help further your mission and help you reach your goals. Some tasks are important and urgent, like health emergencies or meeting critical deadlines. Some tasks aren't important or urgent, like wasting time online or discarding junk mail. Some tasks are urgent but not important, like answering the phone or going to an impromptu meeting. And some tasks are important but not urgent, like long-term planning and relationship building. This last category is where highly effective people focus their time and energy. Most people confuse urgency for importance and spend most of their time on urgent, unimportant tasks. They react to urgent tasks instead of taking action on important tasks. But highly effective people can separate urgency from importance and stay focused on long-term success. Key idea: take control of your priorities by scheduling them on a weekly basis. Staying focused on important tasks requires taking a broad view of your priorities. The key, Covey says, is to schedule your priorities, not to prioritize what's on your schedule. Towards this end, Covey suggests adopting the practice of weekly scheduling. Weekly scheduling provides greater context than daily scheduling and can help you balance priorities. Start by identifying your various roles. You may already have these from your personal mission statement. They might be things like employee, manager, teammate, neighbor, or parent. Then, identify your goals for each of these roles. These are the specific things you want to accomplish this week. These might include completing reports, studying, or making plans with a loved one. For each goal, make a plan. Think of the specific tasks that need to be done. With each task, either schedule it or delegate it. Delegation is the key to effective management. With each task, we can choose to contribute our own time, or we can choose to delegate to others. If you want to manage your work and life in an effective way, delegation is essential. By working with others, you can massively increase your productivity and effectiveness. But there's right and wrong ways to delegate. Many people delegate by giving specific instructions, like file this report or run an errand for me. The manager prescribes specific methods, and the delegate executes those methods. Gopher delegation requires direction and supervision and provides limited returns. But there's a much more effective way to delegate, which Covey calls stewardship delegation. When you use Gopher delegation, you might say go mow the lawn. But when you use stewardship delegation, you would say upkeep of the lawn is now your responsibility. Stewardship delegation is results-based, and it requires you to build trust with the delegate. Building that trust requires clear communication about expectations, resources, and accountability. But if you can communicate clearly and build trust, you can leave the delegate to take complete control of the project. And you can use your own time to focus on other important concerns. Effective management, including scheduling and delegation, is not easy. It requires discipline to stay focused on your long-term goals and values. But if you can put first things first, you will realize the benefits of habits 1, 2, and 3. Chapter 8. The fourth habits 1, 2, and 3 are all about developing your independence. They enable you to make your own plans and set out to achieve them. But to be truly effective, Covey says, we need to do more than master the self. We also need to have strong relationships with others to become an effective leader. Whether you are the president of a company or the janitor, Covey says, the moment you step from independence into interdependence in any capacity, you step into a leadership role. Habits 4, 5, and 6 are all about interdependence and building the skills to maintain and lead strong social relationships. Key idea: highly effective people strive for mutual benefit. There are several different ways that people approach interactions with others. Some people take a win-lose mentality. They treat interactions like a competition and think everything is zero-sum. They equate an opponent's loss with their own gain. Others take a lose-for-which-win mentality. They don't speak up for themselves and let others have their way. In particularly fraught situations, some people take a lose-lose approach. They become deeply intent on making the other person lose. And they are willing to lose themselves in order to make it happen. Sometimes these ways of thinking are unavoidable. For example, many sports require athletes to think win-lose. But in most situations, highly effective people can choose another way. They choose to think win-win. When we choose win-forward-win, we resist the temptation to think that every gain requires a loss. Instead, we adopt what Covey calls an abundance mentality. If you have an abundance mentality, you believe everyone can gain from the interaction. And this type of thinking prepares us for long-term effective relationships. Thinking win-win requires character, and a key component of character is maturity. Maturity, Covey says, is the balance between courage and consideration. When we are courageous, we are self-confident and willing to stand up for what we want. When we are considerate, we are sensitive to the needs of others. If you only display one of these traits, you'll take a lose-win or win-lose approach. Win-win, Covey explains, requires both courage and consideration. The win-win approach also requires strong relationships and trust. Covey suggests thinking of a relationship like an emotional bank account. When we ask or require something from others, we make a withdrawal. When we display understanding, integrity, and kindness, we make a deposit. Healthy relationships require frequent deposits in order to keep trust high. And taking a losing mentality will quickly overdraw the account. This is a key reason why win is usually the best approach. Our lives are interdependent, and our relationships are long-term. A win-lose approach may lead to short-term gains, but it is likely to destroy relationships. A win-win approach can keep relationships strong and mutually beneficial for a long time. If you want your company, family, or organization to think win-win, it takes more than encouragement. You need to set up systems and processes that reinforce win-win thinking. For example, consider how some companies give awards to a few top performers every year. These can be motivating for the few who might win, but can breed resentment from the majority who will lose. And this win-lose mentality will persist no matter how much management talks about collaboration. In one case, Covey worked with a company that preached cooperation, but their salespeople still struggled to work together. After some observation, Covey suggested that the company change the way they give awards to salespeople. Instead of just recognizing the very highest performers, they awarded everyone who sold above a certain threshold. Following Covey's advice, the company gave out 20 times more awards the next year. The change was extremely successful. The previous year, only 40 people had sold over the threshold. Now, 800 employees sold over the threshold. Without making necessary changes to the company's systems and processes, win-win was just talk. Sometimes, a win-win agreement between two parties isn't possible. In these cases, you might feel compelled to accept a deal where you lose, or to accept a deal where the other side loses. But instead, Covey suggests walking away if an agreement isn't good for both parties. Covey calls this approach win-win or no deal. When you choose no deal, you may give up your potential short-term win, but relationships are long-term investments. And by prioritizing a healthy relationship over quick wins, you set yourself up for future success. And many potential win-win agreements down the road. Chapter 9: The fifth habit: seek first to understand, then to be understood. The fifth habit of highly effective people is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Of all the 7 habits, this one is easiest to act on immediately. And if you can develop this habit well, you can drastically strengthen your communication skills. You can build stronger relationships and solve problems that once seemed to have no solution. The key, Covey says, is empathic listening. Key idea: most people don't listen empathetically. The fifth habit is all about listening. Many people think they are effective listeners, but most people are not. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, Covey says. They listen with the intent to reply. Every person has unique situations and feelings, but we often ignore this truth. Instead, we apply our own point of view to the other person. Covey calls this listening autobiographically. When we listen autobiographically, we might say things that feel helpful, but usually are not. Covey details 4 signs of autobiographical listening: evaluating, probing, advising, and interpreting. When we evaluate, we agree or disagree with statements the other person made. We might say, "I don't think that's a good idea," or "I don't think that's what you really want." When we probe, we ask questions that are designed to promote our own viewpoint. We might ask, "What's the matter with you?" or "Why don't you do something different?" When we advise, we offer guidance based on our own experience. We might say, "When I had this problem," or "If I were you." And when we interpret, we try to explain the other person's thinking. We might say, "You just think that because," or "What you really want is." When we use these methods, Covey says, we apply our own worldview to another person's situation. This can leave both parties feeling frustrated. The other person may feel like they can't express what they are really feeling. And you might get aggravated that your advice isn't being followed. This, Covey says, leads to poor relationships within the family, at work, and in all aspects of life. Key idea: empathetic listening requires you to rephrase and reflect. Covey says that to truly understand others, you need to practice empathetic listening. Empathetic listening encourages the other person to open up and to see that you are on their side. Covey says there are 4 stages to developing your ability to listen empathetically. The first is to mimic what the other person is saying. This tactic is the least effective, but it forces you to really listen to what the other person says. The second phase is to rephrase what the other person says. If they say, "I hate my job," you might say, "You don't like your work." The third stage is to reflect their feelings. When they express anger, you might say, "I see you're really frustrated." The fourth and final stage comes from combining the second and third stages. You rephrase and you reflect their feelings. When they say, "I hate my job," you might say, "You're really suffering at work." Once you reach this final stage, Covey says, the other person will begin to open up. When they hear their problems and feelings reflected back to them, they can feel understood. Feelings of helplessness subside, and they can begin to work with you to solve the problem. Key idea: understanding provides a pathway to being understood. Listening empathetically, Covey says, is the key to effective communication. Once you really understand another person, you can communicate in their own context. As a salesperson, you can better understand your customers' needs, and you can explain how your product can address those specific needs. As a manager, you can better understand your employees' motivations, and you can give feedback in ways that your employees will be glad to receive. As a parent, you can show your children that their feelings and struggles are legitimate, and that when it comes to big problems, you are their ally and not their opponent. In all areas of life, understanding others is the first step to being understood. Once you show someone else that you understand their context, your credibility with them increases. You can communicate your own ideas in clear and helpful ways, and you can build and maintain effective long-term relationships. Chapter 10: The sixth habit: synergize. The The fourth habit teaches us to seek mutual benefit. The fifth habit helps us strive to truly understand others. These two habits help us build and maintain strong relationships. But to make these relationships highly effective, we need to develop the sixth habit. The sixth habit of highly effective people is synergize. Key idea: synergy occurs when a relationship becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Effective relationships require trust and cooperation. When trust or cooperation is low, people become defensive or protective. When trust and cooperation is a little higher, the relationship improves. The different parties can show respect for each other and seek a compromise. But when trust and cooperation are very high, the relationship can reach synergy. The people involved can work together to find creative solutions that benefit everyone. Covey explains using an example of a husband and wife. The husband wants to go on a family fishing trip that's already been booked. The wife wants to visit her sick mother, who may pass away soon. If trust and cooperation are low, they might just decide to go on the fishing trip or visit the wife's mother. The partner that doesn't get their way may be frustrated and resentful. If trust and cooperation are somewhat higher, they might decide to make separate plans. The wife goes to visit her mother, and the husband goes on the fishing trip with their children. This outcome is better, but it's unlikely to make either partner very happy. But if trust and cooperation are very high, the husband and wife can find creative solutions together. Maybe they can find a fishing location near the wife's mother's home. Or maybe the husband can watch the kids for a weekend while the wife visits her mother. This is synergy. Together, they found a better solution than either person's initial idea. Compromise means that 1 + 1 = 1/2, Covey says. Synergy means that 1 + 1 may equal 8, 6, or even 1,600. Key idea in synergistic relationships: strength comes from differing views. Highly effective people understand their own limitations. They know that their own worldview does not apply to everyone. And they value their differences with others. Covey says that when he encounters a conflict, he says, "Good. You see it differently. Help me see what you see." This approach helps build trust and encourages openness. And this enables people with different views to find creative solutions together. Key idea: synergy weakens the many forces that restrain performance. German-American sociologist Kurt Lewin introduced a framework known as force field analysis. He explained that a group's level of performance is the result of two types of opposing forces. Driving forces push performance upwards. Driving forces are positive, reasonable, logical. Restraining forces push performance downward. Restraining forces are negative, emotional, illogical. If you want to increase the effectiveness of your family or your company, you may try increasing the driving forces. You might encourage positivity, respect, and trust. But eventually you'll still need to address the restraining forces. These forces may be deep-seated, like competition between siblings or between rivals at work. But if you can build trust and cooperation, you can establish synergy. You can address problems head-on, even if they were simmering in the background for years. And by removing these obstacles, your groups and relationships can become highly effective. Chapter 11: The Seventh Habit: Sharpen the Saw. The name of the seventh habit comes from a story about a man sawing down a tree. After working for hours, the man is exhausted. Suppose you find this man in the woods, Covey says, and you suggest that he sharpen his saw. "I don't have time to sharpen the saw," he says. "I'm too busy sawing." The seventh habit, sharpen the saw, is the habit of personal renewal. Preserving and enhancing your effectiveness requires consistent effort. But without the seventh habit, it's impossible to practice all of the others. Key idea: devote 1 hour a day to physical, spiritual, or mental renewal. Covey says there are 4 dimensions of renewal. Physical renewal involves exercise, eating healthy, and getting rest. Exercise is a particularly important task and is often ignored because it's not urgent. But if you can build up endurance, flexibility, and strength, you will have more energy to practice effective habits. Spiritual renewal involves attention to your values and principles. You might practice spiritual renewal through prayer, meditation, or simply quiet reflection. Mental renewal involves learning and practicing important skills. Often, Covey says, we stop learning after we leave school and college. Instead, we spend much of our time watching TV. To practice mental renewal, Covey suggests reading great books or writing your thoughts in a journal. Physical, spiritual, and mental renewal can all be practiced on your own. They are entirely within your circle of influence. So Covey suggests devoting a minimum of 1 hour every day to one of these types of renewal. That way, you can consistently be sharpening the saw. Key idea: practice social and emotional renewal in your daily interactions. The 4th dimension of renewal is the social and emotional dimension. It involves pushing yourself to practice habits 4, 5, and 6 consistently. Practicing social and emotional renewal can involve service to others through a church or other organization. Or it can involve true devotion to your work, making you feel like you're positively impacting others. The acts can be a source of security, self-confidence, and renewal. Key idea: when you improve in one dimension, you improve in them all. The 4 dimensions of renewal are deeply related. When you improve in one dimension, you improve in all of them. For example, your physical health can improve your mental health. And your spiritual health can improve your emotional health. The same is true for 7 habits. Improving in habit 1 helps you improve habits 2, 3, and so on. The 7th habit is the one that makes all of the others possible. So if you can consistently practice the habit of renewal, you can continue to increase your effectiveness. And you can continue your lifelong process of personal development. The main ideas, Chapter 11. To preserve and enhance your effectiveness, you need to practice renewal. Devote 1 hour per day to physical, spiritual, or mental renewal. Practice social and emotional renewal in your daily interactions. When you improve in one dimension, you improve in them all.